I've been level 60 for a couple of days now, and I've managed to pretty much replace all of the lower level gear that I was wearing up until this point. And I've also managed to pretty much settle my stats around to where I like them and where I'll be running them for the time being. So I will be updating you guys on pretty much where both my Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet Rapier builds are at, going over if I made any changes, the stats, the gear, and all of the good stuff. And on top of that, I also have some PvP footage that I'm going to be breaking down that I'm really excited about. Outpost Rush is finally out, and while the game mode is a ton of fun and is something that I feel like the game definitely needed, the reason why I'm excited to break down footage from this is because one of the most common concerns or questions that I would get about my build is, how do I think it would perform in wars? And most of the time my answer was always, to be honest, I don't really have any interest in optimizing the build for wars because that is not my interest. I really enjoy small scale solo PvP and battlegrounds and stuff like that. So I never really had any intentions of making a war build. But to be honest, I had a feeling as I've been playing the game more that a build like this would definitely be viable in larger scale PvP because of pretty much how the game plays out. It's a super mobile build, as you guys have seen, and I imagined that I'd be able to play this as almost like a roaming assassin. And I played only really a couple of matches. I played about 3 or 4, but it definitely feels like we can fill that role with this build, and I'm super excited about it. Now, don't get me wrong, we're still in light armor, so if you get caught or get hit by too many abilities, you will definitely get blown up. But for the most part, it wasn't as bad as I felt like most people thought it was going to be. So yeah, we're going to be breaking down a couple of fights or a couple of clips that I got from Outpost Rush to actually showcase how you can use the build in action in scenarios like this. And I really want you guys to let me know what you think, because I really plan on doing a lot more commentaries, particularly in Outpost Rush, because while I myself do enjoy solo PvP, I know that a lot of other people really enjoy playing with their friends and playing with their guild, and I feel like Outpost Rush is going to be a really good medium for me to be able to help you guys figure out how to play this build in larger scenarios. But yeah, with all of that out of the way, let's jump into what our character is looking like at 60. So in terms of both builds themselves and how they work, the skills and passives that I chose for them, everything remains the same. We have all the same abilities, all the same passives. In terms of the Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet, I don't believe that they were maxed out yet. So this is what my trees look like for both weapons. Everything is exactly the same. In terms of the last couple of points that I put into each one of these trees and the reasoning behind them, I did break down the reasoning behind that in both build videos, which I'll leave in the description. But if you want to figure out more so an in-depth on how the builds play or how to build them, then I would definitely recommend visiting those videos, because I go way more in-depth in those videos than I can in this one. But in terms of the attributes, I will get into Constitution and why it's at this number in a second. But this is what my current stat setup kind of looks like right now at 60. Now, I did mention in both build videos and a couple of videos after that that I wanted to focus mainly on decks, as the passives for them are really good. Not only for the Rapier, but any dex build in general. But the thing I also said in those videos was I wasn't sure how many points we're gonna have available to us at 60, including gear. So my plan might have changed, and as I've gotten to 60, I found that we definitely don't have as many points as I thought we're gonna have available to us. As I was leveling, I even had to drop my intelligence from 150 down to 100 to even get my dex to be able to get the 200 point passive. And I found that at 100 intelligence, you were doing way less damage on both your intelligence weapons, and it ended up being not enough for PvP or even PvE, to be honest. So I ended up switching things around and putting more points into intelligence. We still have a really good chunk of dex, getting some passives that really help us out, being the thrust damage and the critical chance to our entire build. And we're still getting quite a bit of damage from our dex, but as I mentioned, you just don't have enough points to go a majority into dex. Now, in terms of constitution and why I have it at 120 instead of 100, um, I'll get to the explanation for that in a second, but all you really need to know for the builds and the stats that you need for them, 100 constitution is enough for this build. Trying to get to 120 and do the thing that I'm going to explain here in a second is honestly quite time consuming and a little bit expensive. So before I even explain why I'm at 120, just know that having 100 dex, 200 intelligence, and 100 constitution is where I feel like the sweet spot is for these builds. Now, the reason why I'm at 120 is because, as I mentioned, I do plan on going the crafting route in this game. And because of that, you aren't able to get the gear perks that you need for PvP builds on the PvP gear. They only have Resilient and I think one other perk. And while Resilient is really good, I felt like having the gear perks was going to be more value to me. But I still wanted to have some form of damage resilience. So this is what my stats look like right now without any buffs. The reason why we're at 120 is because I wanted to try and reach the 150 point passive to get that minus 10% crit damage. It's not as much as you could get on a full set of PvP gear, but it's definitely way better than not having any at all. And it really helps out because I'm still able to just completely fill my slots with gear perks. As you can see by the allocation, I've done that by my gear. It's been really time consuming, as I mentioned, to try and get my actual stat allocations and the perks that I need on all my gear. It's been really tough, but if you can manage to get the pieces to have your stat lineup look like this, then the reason why I have 120 is because with attribute feud, you end up being at a really nice layout where we have a ton of damage for both our weapons, but we have a nice chunk of health and we're hit that minus 10% crit damage. As you can see, we're at about 9.6 k health here, and I believe if I get a amulet that has the healthy passive on it, I can even get this up to 10k. So 10k with minus 10% crit damage for a quote-unquote glass cannon DPS build, I feel like is a very nice setup, and we're going to do a lot more testing here in the future, but this is what my stats look like. And even in terms of the gear, we're running the same perks. I had to drop a couple of them to reach the stat layout that I have right now, so we are missing a couple that I would really want on our build, but for the time being, this is what I'm running. And then, just in case you were wondering about gems, I am running the Malachite gems, I believe they're called, in all of my gear pieces. I still have yet to replace them in my jewelry, but I just feel like having the elemental and physical absorption is just a nice mix. for kind of all the damage in the game, because as I mentioned, we like to play solo, and I end up coming across both mages and physical damage a lot. So I really just wanted to get the most resistances across the board that I could get. And then in terms of the gems in my weapons, we run a frozen gem in our rapier, and specifically the frozen, which I'll go over in a second here. And we're still running opportunist in our ice gauntlet. When you get your fire staff, you're gonna want to run the opal gem. The reason why I'm not running this right now is because I need empowered fireball, but I'm still running the opal gem in my fire staffs. But in terms of the ice gem, I don't switch it out when I'm switching between fire staff and ice gauntlet. I really just keep it in for both. But the reason why you want to have this in, especially for ice gauntlet, is because if you take a look at the ultimate chill passive, just take a look at what that says. Ice abilities chill targets, increasing ice damage, not your gauntlet ice damage for 35%. So that means if you hit somebody with any one of these abilities, it applies the chill debuff. You can do a swap and then have a essentially buff to your rapier because it's buffing that ice gem. So I really like running a frozen or ice gem in my rapier because it really synergizes well with the way I like to play on the gauntlet. But yeah, Outpost Rush is out, and it is honestly a ton of fun. But the thing that I'm really excited about for it is to be able to put my build to the test to see if it's really viable in larger scale scenarios. And as I mentioned, you are able to play as that roaming assassin type of playstyle where you kind of try and target the ranged DPS who are usually a little bit squishier and the healers. But on top of that, because of how mobile we are, as you can see in the background clip here, we literally jump into the middle there, take out that one player, cliche through their entire team, disrupt the backline just enough to give our team enough time to just barge through the gates there and start dominating the point. Like, I'm super excited for the future of this build because, as I mentioned, the game mode's only really been out for less than a day, and I only got to play a couple of matches on it, but I can already see a ton of potential for this build in team play. And I already have more ideas for specific builds for group play. So the fact that this one is already able to perform in multiple roles is really making me happy. But let's go ahead and break down some of these clips here. So we've got a pretty nice clip here showcasing the overall viability of this build in larger scale fights and the amount of momentum you can have just by yourself on fights. But you see we take quite a bit of damage there, so I just disengage and heal, and we spot that these players are trying to go for a backdoor push here, so we jump over the edge, throw down an ice shower, and completely lock down that attempt. A friendly player here sees that we are fighting some players, so he gives us a little hand, and we try and go ahead and push to see if we can force these guys on a respawn. We get the mage pretty low, and after seeing the other two builds, I decided to go ahead and try and focus this mage because it's going to be the squishier target to take down. So I'm just trying to do my best to stay aggressive and put some pressure into him. We start taking some attacks from some of his friendly players, but we're doing a pretty good job of dodging and keeping the pressure. But we take a little bit of damage here, and I get quite low. So we just jump into our tomb, reset, drop the aggro. We get a little bit of help from our friendly player. So we just go ahead and eat a little bit of food and jump right back in to go ahead and assist. And he's managed to keep the pressure up on the mage. So I go ahead and I try to break his entomb there. We missed the heavy, but we take out his buddy. Immediately, Flichet, go ahead, lock him down with the stagger, and we're able to go ahead and take out the mage as well as his buddy there. Really nice fight. I honestly am loving this build in this scenario when you have so much room and other players to kind of distract the enemies from all attacking you. Yeah, jumping right back into it here, we have a pretty big brawl here on the point. My team does have numbers, so we are going to end up capturing this point here, but one of the things that's very important in fights is to prioritize healers because, especially if they're good, they are able to keep a large amount of players alive. And there's a very, very good healer on the enemy team here. And with their team respawning at the point just past the road here, with all of them running back down, they would have been able to pretty much keep up a stand and re-push this point. So you're going to see me immediately go for the healer, knowing how good he is because I've run into him earlier on in this match. So I go ahead and I try to see if I can land a stagger, and we actually do and try to go for a combo, but he's a very, very good player himself and manages to disengage and keep himself alive. But we keep up the pressure and just roll, land a shower, and put in an insane amount of damage into him. And because he's forced to disengage, he doesn't have the time to also keep himself alive. And we're able to pretty much assassinate the healer amidst all this chaos. The enemy team, knowing that that healer is down, end up running for the hills because, like I said, he is a very, very good player. But playing that rogue assassin role there and allowing our team to pretty much keep the momentum and continue the push. And then lastly here, one of the things that I'm really, really enjoying about Battlegrounds is because we aren't running solo, a lot of the time you don't have every single opponent focused on you, which, depending on the situation, gives you the opportunity to really go all out on this build and really put in a ton of damage. You see, we jump into the Baron pit here, and there's quite a few enemies here overpowering our team, preventing us from getting the boss here. And we kind of just follow this enemy who's trying to go ahead and overpower our teammates. And we jump behind all three of them, and with none of them focused on us, we are able to just go ahead and pretty much just assassinate three of those players right off the bat, immediately cutting the numbers in half and allowing us a pretty much free boss fight. There's a ton of exploration that I have to do on this build, but with the few fights that I've had already in this game mode, it's really, really making me excited for running this in more group settings. But yeah, I hope the update was informative, and please let me know what you guys think about the idea of commentaries for this game mode in mind. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.